I'm ready to go to Chilton. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chrissy and this is my cozy corner. In today's video, I'm going to be reading and dressing like Rory Gilmore for a week. Now, if you know anything about the Gilmore Girls, you know that it's the perfect advertisement for fall. I rewatch it almost every October, so it's the perfect month to do it in, and like Halloween dress up like kind of goes with the theme here. Also, if you know anything about Rory Gilmore, you know one of her favorite things to do in general is to read, just like that's one of my favorite things to do. So I just thought it was the perfect mini challenge to do this week. Now, I'm gonna show you my Rory Gilmore reading challenge PDF that I printed out. Here is the Rory Gilmore reading challenge list of books. Some of them I've already read. Obviously, I'm not gonna do all of these books. I think eventually it would be a cool thing just to keep track of with this paper. But I am gonna do like 3 or 4 books this week. All the books in this video were mentioned one way or another in the Gilmore Girls show, and I will let you know what season, episode, and scene they were mentioned in. So the first book I'm gonna be reading is gonna be Franny and Zooey by J.D. Salinger. This book is mentioned in season 2, episode 15, when Jess is helping Lorelai clean out her rain gutters. Now, Rory, who is Lorelai's daughter, is dating Dean, and long story short, she lost or left her bracelet. Jess ends up picking it up. Rory is freaking out. So Jess goes to return the bracelet because he stole it to Rory's room, so she stops freaking out. And then Jess is coming out of Rory's room after he drops off the bracelet, and he bumps into Lorelai, and Lorelai is like, hey. And Jess is like, hey. And then Lorelai is like, did you get lost? And Jess is like, no, I was just looking at Rory's books. And then Lorelai is like, uh-huh. And then Jess is like, I wanted to see if she had Franny and Zooey. She does. And then Lorelai is like, okay. And then Jess is like, I was gonna get it for her if she didn't. And then Lorelai is like, that's very nice of you. And then Jess is like, yeah, I should probably get back to work. So that was the scene that this book was mentioned in. So I'm going to start with this one. I don't know too much about this book, but I do know that it was published in the New Yorker in 1955 and 1957 as 2 different short stories, one following the brother and one following the sister. So I'm interested to see what all this is about. Also, if Gilmore Girls took any inspiration from some of these books that they mentioned, because I assume that they are beloved by the writers and producers, but we shall see. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, y'all, I finished Franny and Zooey by J.D. Salinger, and I have my Chilton uniform back on because I'm gonna do 1 outfit per book that I read for this video. Now, I never would have picked this book up had I not decided to do this video and read some books that Rory Gilmore has read, but I'm glad that I did. I wouldn't say that it was like my favorite thing in the world, but it was an interesting read and it was entertaining. Now, this is 2 short stories that were posted in the New Yorker in 1955 and 1957, so the language is very different, and I would say it's probably reminiscent of that time period because that's when it was written. Franny and Zooey are the youngest siblings in the Glass family. So the first part of the book follows Franny, who is visiting her boyfriend in college, and coincidentally he goes to Yale, which Rory in Gilmore Girls goes to Yale, and his name's Lane, and Rory's best friend is Lane, but she is a woman, so that is different. But I'm just like wondering if that's kind of the inspiration behind the names and deciding on the college that Rory was gonna go to. While she's visiting her boyfriend, it's definitely clear that something's going on with her. She's very disconnected. She's very much like, seems like she's like over everything. And I was kind of frustrated because on one, well, Lane didn't really like understand, like, why are you talking like this? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, he kept asking her this. And the dialogue was really interesting and it felt a little chaotic, but watching like old movies, it was definitely on par with how they did speak back then, so I can't really fault it for that. I was annoyed with both Franny and Lane because Lane wasn't really speaking to her, I feel like, appropriately, and he was very short with her. He was very just like, what the hell is wrong with you? But on the other hand, Franny was having trouble kind of communicating exactly what was wrong with her, so he was just kind of like, didn't know, and it was really bothering him. Franny is just so sick of the phoniness in society and just being fake. Like, she acts and plays, and she was just like, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm just like tired of being fake. I'm tired of seeing fakeness. Something happens at the end of her part of the story where Elaine is like, actually now I'm gonna take her seriously. She really is like going through something, and she's kind of escaping in like a spiritual way. The second part of this book follows Zooey, her brother, who is at the Glass family's apartment in New York. And he is, I feel like, not too kind to his mother. I don't like the way he speaks to his mother. I was like, what is this about? But eventually Franny ends up back there and the two of them do connect, and I really liked that Zooey helps Franny out with some of the things that she's going through. So like I said, this is not something I would normally have read, but it was enjoyable. I think I'm gonna give it maybe 3 stars. I'm gonna sit on it a little bit because I think that more people who are going through things in their lives will connect with this, but I'm not, so I didn't feel like I could connect to the characters. When I'm reading a very character-driven book, I feel like I want to connect with them some way or another, and that just didn't happen. So I would say that's my only problem with it. It was enjoyable, it was well written, and yeah, that's kind of really all I have with that. So we're gonna move on to the next book in this video. So I have my next Rory Gilmore outfit and my next book called How and Other Poems by Allen Ginsberg, I believe. And this book was featured in season 2, episode 5. It was called Nick and Nora, and then Sid and Nancy is what the episode was called. I had to do this book because of this scene. Jess comes to town. He's Luke's nephew, and Lorelai and Rory kind of throw a dinner for them to make him feel welcome. He's kind of like a juvenile, but he's a reader. So he's kind of looking at Rory's books, and he picks this book up and ends up putting notes in the margins for her. So after the dinner that didn't go as planned or even really well, Rory sees him in town and he stops and he's like showing her some magic tricks, and then he goes, I have one last trick for you, and then pulls this book out, and she goes, oh, you bought a copy? I told you I would lend you mine. And he goes, it is yours. And she's like, you stole it. And he's like, nope, just wanted to put some notes in the margins for you. And then she looks and she's like, what? You've read this before. And then he goes, about 40 times. And she goes, I thought you said you didn't read much. And he goes, well, what is much? Then he's like, night, Rory. And she's like, night, Dodger. And he goes, Dodger? And she's like, figure it out. And then he's like, Oliver Twist. And then she shakes her head. And at that moment, she found herself somebody who loves books just as much as she does. And I love Jess. He's one of my favorite characters in Gilmore Girls. So I had to do this one because I love that scene so much. So I'm super excited about this. I don't know anything about it beside that scene in Gilmore Girls. So we're gonna go ahead and get started on this one. Okay, so I finished How and Other Poems by Allen Ginsberg. There is How, the main poem, which is the most popular, and then there is also some other poems after How. So How specifically inspired the Beat generation in 1950s America, which embraced a more freer way of speaking and freedom of speech. It did reject traditional poetry. The specific style of Beat generation and this poem in general was a reaction to the Cold War, and I feel like the title How is absolutely perfect for this poem. I feel like the author is literally screaming at you, almost like in a rant. Like, it's so emotional and just full of expression. For example, I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked. And there's a ton of lines like that that makes it feel like he's like ranting at you. So it's very like passionate. I wouldn't call this a pleasant read. I feel like, although it wasn't a pleasant read because it just feels like he's like really like yelling at you like, this is how I feel, this is how it is in America. But all at the same time, I couldn't put it down because I felt like I was hooked on every single line. In how Ginsberg is celebrating those who are treated inferiorly, and he specifically highlights how America is just a big walking contradiction because it preaches about how we accept your differences but then doesn't protect those rights. And I feel like that was very much the case in the 1950s. So I really did enjoy this quick little read. I know that Jess talked about how he put notes in the margins in Gilmore Girls, and I would like cut off my left pinky to see his annotated version of this book. So yeah, I did enjoy this one, so on to the next one. Okay, so I am in my next Rory Gilmore outfit, and I have my next book, which is Greatest Tragedies of Shakespeare. We got Julius Caesar, we got Macbeth, we got Romeo and Juliet, we got Hamlet, and the one that I'm going to be reading, which is Othello. So in season 2, episode 19, titled Teach Me Tonight, Rory is tutoring Jess, and he's kind of fooling around, messing around, not really taking it seriously. So then in the scene, Jess is like, I'll tell you what, let's go get some ice cream, and when we get back, I'll study. And Rory's like, but this is a diner, we have ice cream here. And then Jess is like, but we don't have cones. And then Rory's like, cones. And then Jess is like, I need cones. And then Rory's like, so if we go get ice cream, and Jess is like, in cones, and then Rory's like, you'll be a perfect student for the rest of the night, and Jess is like, that's right, and then Rory's like, I cannot believe you less. Here, you drive while I read you Othello. Won't that be fun? And Jess is like, you have no idea how much. So I love that scene. I loved all the episodes that I mentioned in this reading challenge video. So I'm super excited because I have read Shakespeare before. I've actually read all the tragedies in this book except for Othello. So I'm super excited. I'm gonna dive into this and I will update you a little bit later. As you can see, my backdrop has changed. I thought with the crisp, nice autumn air, it's perfect for sweater weather that I would come out here and film. The birds are kind of loud, but that's quite all right because it's nature, so whatever. So I finished reading Othello by Shakespeare. This is about Othello, who is a war general in Venice, and his demise at the hands of Iago, one of his trusted lieutenants. When Cassio gets promoted to a higher rank than Iago, Iago gets pretty upset and starts to plant the seed of a false affair between Othello's wife Desdemona and Cassio, his trusted promoted lieutenants. Iago is literally the grand master manipulator in this story. He is a really good villain. One of my favorite things about this play is how symbolic this setting is. The birds are so loud. We hear you, birdie. So this setting starts in a larger city of Venice, and then we go to a smaller city of Cyprus. Then we end up in a fortress, and then a garden, and then a private room, and a bedchamber, and a bed, and you're getting smaller and smaller, and it really showcases how successful Iago was in his puppeteering and ultimately trapping them all in like a big web or net. These might be some spoilers here, but Iago is literally the picture of misogyny. Roderigo is so freaking gullible. Othello literally just talks to your wife. The miscommunication trope was so strong, it was ridiculous. And you know what, like poor Cassio, because he did not ask for any of this. Like he did not ask for it. I literally loved it. It's not my favorite Shakespeare play that I've read or watched, but I really liked it. I would say a solid 4 stars. There's others that I like better, like Hamlet and Julius Caesar, and probably even Romeo and Juliet, which is obviously like a very basic thing to say, but I do really love that one. But I will say I really enjoyed this one still. And if you have trouble understanding Shakespeare, I do highly suggest watching the plays before reading the plays, because the words make sense more, because it is Old English or very early English. So it's gonna make sense more if you're already familiar with the play, because I have read some of the other ones, but I watched the plays first, so the story made more sense. Whereas I had not watched Othello, so I did find it a little bit difficult to understand at times. So anyways, I am gonna go get my next book and my next Rory Gilmore outfit, and I will see you over there. All right, you guys, I am at the Morehouse in Yorktown. I thought it was the perfect backdrop for a Gilmore Girls related video. I have my last Chilton outfit on. This time I have the sweater vest. And the last book that I'm doing in this video, which I'm almost done reading it as a matter of fact, is Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This one is featured in season 1, episode 16 of Gilmore Girls, when Rory is getting off the bus from Chilton and her boyfriend at the time, Dean, is waiting at the bus stop for her, and he's reading this because she had recommended it to him. And she gets off the bus and she's like, so? And he's like, it's depressing. And she's like, it's beautiful. And then he's like, he says a spoiler, which I'm not gonna say. And then she's like, and I bet you she looks great doing it. And then he's like, I don't know, I think Tolstoy is just a little over my head. And then Rory's like, no, Tolstoy wrote for the masses, the common man. It's completely untrue that you have to be some kind of genius to understand his stuff. And then Dina's like, yeah, but, and then Rory's like, now I know it's big. And then Dina's like, very big and long, and then Dean goes very, very long. And then Rory's like, and the Russian names tend to be similar, making it confusing. And then Dean is like, yeah, every person's name ends in ski. How is that possible? And then Rory's like, but it's my favorite book. I know if you just give it a try. And then Dean is like, all right, I'll try again. And then Rory's like, really? You won't be sorry. So that is the book that I'm reading right now. I only have a little bit left, so we're gonna go ahead and finish this and then I'll give you my full thoughts. Whoops, I didn't know there was a flap there. All right, so let's go finish this. Alright, so I finished Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This is not just about Anna, but her story is she is married to a rich nobleman, and she's fine with life until one day she ends up meeting and having an affair with a younger man named Vronsky, and then she realizes she's not as happy. She ends up falling in love with him, and the rest I'm gonna leave you to read about if you choose, because I don't want to spoil anything. But it's more than just Anna. There's other characters, side characters you really want to pay attention to. I was super confused in the beginning because it wasn't really talking about her. It's talking about all these other people, but you want to be conscious of those other people because it's important, I feel like, to the overall story. It builds a really good plot. Now, Levin specifically, you want to pay attention to him. I feel like he is one of the main characters in this story. I feel like what really helped me understand some of these character motivations is knowing what political and social time that this book was written in, which was about like mid-1870s Russia, but it was when Alexander II was introducing liberal reform, kind of going from that past patriarchal aristocracy to a more modern, like, rise of the middle class. And you kind of see tensions through these different views through Levin's eyes, the tensions of like the old, already established ways, and then of course the new, like, more innovative ways. I really love how this book highlights two relationships in two very different ways that are very human. One is more rooted in respect, while the other relationship is more rooted in passion. And it does show how, like, vanity and deception that comes with the passionate relationship sometimes can overall, like, lead to some terrible consequences. Now, I really liked this book. I don't know why, but I feel like I've been giving a lot more 5 stars out lately. I liked it a lot. It was my favorite book in this Reading Like Rory Gilmore for a Week challenge. I feel also like the beginning is a little harder to get into, so I started out on audiobook and then I switched over to the paperback, which does help. I will say that this book is a classic, but it is by no means flowery like some of the other classics. For example, Pride and the Prejudice. So I feel like it's a lot easier to get into, but I really like it and I am still thinking about it. I mean, like, I just finished it, of course I'm still thinking about it, but I can still see myself thinking about this book in the future. I absolutely loved it. I was afraid that I was gonna be too dumb to enjoy any of the books that Rory Gilmore read, but that wasn't totally the case. I feel like getting into character and dressing like Rory Gilmore and then reading some books that I see mentioned in scenes was so fun. And now when I go back and rewatch Gilmore Girls, I feel like I'll be able to understand some of the dialogue when they mention some of the books and the scenes a little bit more. I did rewatch the scene before filming this video so that I can see which books go with what scene, and I try to pick out ones that kind of strongly inferred that Rory had read the book and not were just, like, some were mentioned like on the Rory Gilmore challenge, like The Lord of the Rings, which I've already read, but I had never seen her read it or talk about it, or it wasn't really like in a scene, I felt like. And I might be wrong about that. When I go back and rewatch, I guess I can figure that out. But I try to pick ones that were really mentioned and discussed. So I had a lot of fun. I hope to see you guys next week. I want to keep continuing to have bookish conversations with you. So comment down below if you've read any of the books in this Rory Gilmore reading for her like a week challenge, or if not and you just love Gilmore Girls and you want to talk about what team you're on, Team Jess and Luke over here. So yeah, comment down below. I post videos every Sundays, so let's keep having these bookish conversations together. I hope to see you then. Bye guys.